Alright, so, hi everyone, my name is Nathan. I'm going to read you a story about my brother and I. Alright. Ever since I was a young man, people have told me that my brother and I look exactly alike. It makes sense given we have the same parents. We have the same facial structure, we have the same build, we have the same hair color and style. You would think it'd be me who would copy his hairstyle, but trust me, it's the other way around. My brother and I have very similar features, but these go way beyond physical appearance. We have always loved to do much of the same stuff, and even so, we couldn't be more different. We were born 10 years apart, went to completely different schools, and completely different colleges, and had very different upbringings. I'm here today to tell you the story of my brother and I, a story that goes way back to when I was just a tiny toddler. "Nathan, stop it," said Neil in a low voice as he was messing with something on his computer. "Why?" I asked in an annoying little voice. He ignored me. I raised my fist and continued to punch his leg as hard as I could, all the while giggling maniacally. With alarming speed and precision, my brother suddenly swung at me, and I was sent spiraling backwards. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I grabbed my face in shock. "Mommy!" I screamed. "Neil slapped me!" "Oh my God, Nathan," Neil muttered angrily. Immediately, 2 sets of footsteps began pounding their way up the stairs. Our mom and dad came into my brother's room, where they found me sobbing and my brother sulking over his computer. They did not look pleased. There, my mother said to me as she hurried over and examined the side of my face. "Are you okay, sweetie?" she asked in a soft voice. "No, Mommy, he hit me!" I screamed. "David Neil Vanos," my dad said sternly. "What?" my brother asked flatly. "Why did you hit your brother?" "Because he was being really goddamn annoying. Can you please make him stay out of my room?" my brother yelled. And so the conflict continued, and my mom and dad said something to my brother about not knowing his own strength and to be more careful. And they said something to me about staying out of my brother's room from here on out because I needed to respect him. I was 4 years old and quite the little brat. I probably wanted him to run around while holding me on top of a beanbag or something. He used to do this with me occasionally. In those early days of our relationship, my brother and I didn't exactly get along. I was annoying, and he was a teenager who was coping with adolescence. At the time, I didn't think we could be more different, so I spent my time as a little kid with my other annoying little friends, or doing some random thing on my own. Then Neil left for college, and I wasn't expecting to miss him as much as I did. Things weren't the same around the house with just my parents and my older sister. It felt a little weird not being able to watch Neil and his friends make a movie, or watch Neil as he fought his way to some scary video game. It felt so weird, in fact, that I decided to write my brother a letter when I was in 2nd grade about how much I missed him. I also started making ridiculous movies and playing a lot of video games myself. I was already starting to wear the same face that he did, and I was only in elementary school. Weird, right? Well, it gets weirder. My brother graduated from Washington State University with a bachelor's in international business. He decided to stay with us for a while as he set out for his job search, and he definitely wound up staying with us for longer than he had planned to. I'm not sure what he learned in school at WSU, but he certainly learned a thing or two about guitar. I knew he was playing while he was in college. He would come home for his breaks and absolutely shred the thing while I played outside with my friends or when I was trying to sleep late at night. But when he came home from WSU for good, I got to hear his guitar every day. He'd play music that I wasn't even aware of at the time, except for Sweet Child of Mine, which I remember hearing pretty much every night. What's strange about this is that the most valuable skill he learned while at WSU was nothing at all about business. It was his dexterity with music, which he didn't even go to school for. It was during this time that he lived with us in which I really got to know Neil. I didn't really have any good friends while I was in middle school. I went to a private school called St. George's, and my 4 best friends all went to Mountainside Middle. Don't ask me why I didn't transfer. St. George's put middle schoolers through way more work than necessary for 13-year-olds. Because I didn't have a great deal of friends, I found myself spending a lot more time hanging around Neil when he wasn't out at the bars with his friends. One of the things I remember we did all the time was ski. When I was in 8th grade, I must have gone skiing about 25 times in the winter. Nearly every time I went with my brother and my dad. Neil and I would ski all day, every day, probably take a jump or two that was way too risky for our skill level, but we did it anyway. The car ride home was usually fun too. I remember he introduced me to this heavy metal band called Judas Priest that we listened to all the way home. He said, "Hey, I think you'll like this," and he was spot on with that assumption. I listened to Living After Midnight every single day for the next year. This was how I started liking the same music that he did. We also did various other things. We played video games, went to the lake in the summer, jumped on the trampoline, hung out with our parents, and even played some sprinkler basketball. I stopped thinking of my brother as a jerk and started thinking of him as the coolest person I'd ever met. He was a great role model in every way. He didn't smoke or do drugs, he didn't drink in excess, he was responsible, and he always respected my parents. I started acting like him at school. I subconsciously adopted all of the same mannerisms that belonged to him. Whenever he came to an event at school and my classmates saw him, they told me he looked exactly like me, just older. I can't decide if it's genetics or if it's more than that. Whatever it is, my brother and I wore the same face well. The days of my brother living with us weren't meant to last a lifetime, however. Bright people like him are not doomed to stay out of work forever. While I was in 8th grade, my brother went back to college at Spokane Falls Community College, got a degree in audio engineering, and got a new job working for a company here in Spokane. He also met a great girl named Allison while he was at SFCC and wound up moving out to live with her in Spokane Valley. I was so happy for him when this day came, words could not describe how I felt. But I was also sad because my best friend wasn't living with us anymore. Years went on, I made new friends and got into new things. I started running like crazy, fell in love with cross country and track, and got to know my peers at St. George's a lot better. All the while, I saw my brother less and less. I started living on a different path than he did, and I crafted a face of my own as I did. One thing about my brother that always stuck with me, and always will, is his taste in music. Classic rock was what he loved, and it was what he always played on his guitar. And I grew to love the same music as he did. My junior year in high school, I got tired of listening to all this great music and not knowing how to play any of it. So I came up with a solution. I had to learn guitar. And who better to teach me than my own brother, who had long since mastered the art. So I called my brother and set up my first ever guitar lesson. The first chord my brother taught me was a G chord. I loved the sound of that chord from the moment I finally got done struggling to put my fingers in the right position to play it. I also loved the D chord and the C chord once I finally learned how to play them as well. The first few weeks of trying out guitar were beyond rough. I couldn't get the transitions between the chords down to save my life. My fingertips burned after only practicing for 20 minutes a day. I was in awe at how good Neil was. I didn't think I would ever be able to play any solos or songs like he did. But after a month or two, I started to get the hang of it. That summer I learned More Than a Feeling and Peace of Mind by Boston, and my senior year of high school I learned how to play my favorite song of all time, Hotel California by the Eagles. I didn't think this was too bad for a guy who hadn't even been playing guitar for a year. But I attribute all my brief success playing guitar to my brother, whose skills still make mine look completely lame in comparison. Learning guitar gave me another opportunity to continue to get to know my brother for another few years. I went to his apartment every weekend for the rest of high school to play guitar. When I went to college, lessons stopped simply because cross country and track combined with school simply became too time consuming for me to continue my guitar lessons with Neil. But I still play guitar in my own time, just like he did when he was in college. In fact, there are a lot of things about us that are very similar besides the music we like, the way we act, the things we do for fun, the type of people or the type of friends we have. All so similar it's kind of scary. The age gap between us is 10 years, but our faces are still very similar. I wish I got to see Neil more often. He's turned into the nicest and most genuine person I know, and I still look up to him even as a young adult. My wish to see my brother doesn't get granted that often, but when it does, I'm always thankful for the opportunity. One of the most recent times that I saw my brother was during Easter of this year, a few weeks after he announced that he and Allison were engaged. Let me describe the scene to you. I just got home from driving somewhere, and I stepped into the kitchen, where I was met by the welcoming smell of my mom's cooking and by the smiling faces of my parents, my brother's fiancée, Allison, and of course, Neil. We talked for a little bit about some past stuff, or current events, or whatever. Out of the blue, Neil handed me a little white envelope. "Nathan, we wanted to ask you first to make sure you'd be okay with it. I think when you read it, you'll understand, but it's obviously your decision," said Neil. He and Allison watched in anticipation. I was a little confused, to be honest. I had no idea what this could be. I opened the card carefully, now unsure if it was one of those run-of-the-mill thank you cards or whatnot. When I pulled out the little yellow card, there was only a picture of a black tuxedo with a flower on the chest and 2 words that stood out to me. Those words were, best man. My heart leapt. How could I say no? I laughed. We all smiled. That's it. Yeah. Thanks for being here, guys. It means a lot.
Yeah.
All
Good job, Nathan.
Thanks.
Good job, Nathan.